Welcome to our first Map Mondays GIS workshop of the fall semester. Just a little bit of a preview for our workshops here this semester. We've got a total of 4 planned. Today's the first one, obviously. The theme, with the exception of today, is essentially getting started with GIS. But today's workshop topic, which is migrating GIS projects from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, is a bit of a special case, and I'll explain why that is here in a moment. But it really is designed for those of you that have had experience working with ArcMap. Perhaps ArcMap is your default desktop GIS software application, and now is definitely the time to begin leaving ArcMap in the rearview mirror and adopting ArcGIS Pro as your primary desktop GIS software. But we do have 3 additional workshops scheduled throughout the semester, and I'll introduce those at the end of today. I guess before I get started, I'd just like to introduce myself. I know a handful of you in the crowd today, but my name is Sean Hutchinson. I'm a professor in the Department of Geography and Geospatial Sciences. I manage the university core lab called the Geographic Information Systems Spatial Analysis Lab, and I'm one of the co-directors of the group sponsoring the Map Mondays workshops, the Institute for Digital Agriculture and Advanced Analytics. What I've got planned for you here this morning is a brief introduction to ArcGIS software in general and ArcGIS Pro in particular. And then I'm going to assume that you know very little about ArcGIS Pro here this morning, and even start at the most basic level, getting the software to start for you, which will require us to set up a named user license that belongs to you and that you can carry with you as long as you're an active K-State faculty member, staff member, or student. So that's the software and licensing piece. And then before our first and only break of the morning, we'll try one technique that we can use for migrating projects from the older ArcMap software into ArcGIS Pro using something called a map package. After that break, we'll see how we can bring in ArcMap map documents. If I had a nickel for every time I said ARC or map in a GIS course, I would certainly be a very rich person. But migrating projects via ArcMap map documents. And then we'll go through inside of ArcGIS Pro after importing a map document and get a very brief tour of looking at layouts in ArcGIS Pro, how we can change symbology, and do a little bit of editing. Okay? And then time permitting, hopefully we'll have some time. I'd like to preview some of our later workshops this semester and show how you can take a map or perhaps even data in ArcGIS Pro and very easily share it with others through what I'm going to call a GIS portal. And I'll try to define what that term means here in a bit. Then we'll wrap up with some additional opportunities and a link where you can provide us with some feedback about this morning's workshop. Okay? I should also say, I'm happy to talk for nearly 2 hours this morning, but if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. That will probably, if you're engaging with lots of questions, that's probably how you're going to get even more out of this morning's workshop. Okay? As an instructor who really specializes in geographic information systems, software, techniques, analysis, it's a real daunting task to maybe have a single workshop where you're trying to cover a lot of territory. This is kind of a classic slide that we use in GIS education to try to convey a bit about the breadth of geographic information systems, which can be considered both a research tool, a communications tool, as well as a distinct branch of science, geographic information science. but if we look at GIS in its role as a tool, there's a lot of territory here that we've got to be familiar with to be as effective as possible as a GIS user. That includes software, right? Understanding how to effectively use GIS software, what we can do with it, licensing it, operating it successfully. We also have to understand a little bit about computer hardware. Unfortunately, depending on what we want to do with GIS, we working exclusively on the desktop. If that's true, then we have to be aware of minimum system operating requirements for the Esri suite of desktop software applications, which actually are quite significant. Or are we doing mostly server-side GIS, which makes us, forces us, I should say, to be a bit more familiar with servers, network operations, security certificates, a whole laundry list of things. Data. If I were to say vector data and raster data, do those terms mean anything to you? The two primary spatial data models that we work with inside of a GIS. Vector is points, lines, and polygons. Raster are things like images, UAV images, satellite images, very, very different in how the GIS stores that data. And in addition to that, probably more importantly, there's certain types of analyses that these different data models excel in, and we've got to be able to choose wisely as we're assembling data for a project. Methods. As I'll mention here in a moment, there are over 1,000 geoprocessing tools in the ArcGIS Pro software. So to be an effective GIS user, we probably need to be familiar with probably 100 or 120 vector and raster processing tools to have at our disposal immediately, things that we use routinely to manipulate spatial data, convert spatial data from one format to another, do analysis, put together maps. Okay? And then we also have to be familiar enough with those techniques when we know sort of what we want to do, but not the exact name of a tool. We have a fighting chance of finding that within our GIS software. And then lastly, we've got to understand people, right? Are we here with a hat on for a GIS technician or a GIS analyst? Are you a manager or administrator? Depending on your role, you're going to interface with GIS in very different ways. So there's more to it than the software. And in fact, I think when students come and take some of our classes, they may be surprised, maybe disappointed at least initially, that we really don't just focus on the nuts and bolts of the software. And in my experience, I think that's justified because that experience comes. More importantly, what we try to do with our geospatial curriculum is give students an opportunity to exercise skills or develop new skills that make them better spatial thinkers, which ultimately is the purpose of GIS software, is to do spatial analysis, think about problems in a very different way, that spatial context, and then prepare products that communicate the results of our work in a variety of formats. Okay, with that little bit of a prelude, I wanted to talk briefly about the Esri GIS software ecosystem. Esri is a private company, the Environmental Systems Research Institute, and they are the producers of any GIS software that has ARC in the title. And they have been around for quite a long time. I'll show you a timeline of GIS software development here in a moment. But we're here today to look at ArcGIS Pro. And if you already are an ArcMap, or here what I'm calling ArcGIS Desktop, if you're familiar with that and have been using that in the past to make the process of transitioning over to ArcGIS Pro as your primary desktop GIS software a little bit easier. ArcGIS Pro has been around for a while now. In its primary purpose, the reason Esri developed it is to provide us as GIS professionals with what they call a portal-centric software application. And I try to illustrate that here, where the portal identifies ArcGIS Online. Has anybody heard of ArcGIS Online before? Yeah. Portal is just another term that loosely means the same thing as ArcGIS Online. Or ArcGIS Enterprise, which again is sort of the same as ArcGIS Online, but you're hosting those software components locally. Okay. The portal is a server or a cloud-based system that's software as a service, so we can access some geoprocessing capability through GIS portal software like ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, data storage, and a variety of other things. So it's that connection to online content and services, in addition to data that we might be storing locally that we've acquired and have stored on our computer desktops, integrate those together, and then turn around perhaps at the end, take the products that we create and save them back out in the cloud in the form of web maps or custom GIS web applications, dashboards, a variety of other things. So when you look at Esri software, you kind of have to start with Portal, and then how we're going to interact with Portal. And this has been a fundamental change in my career, is we are now portal-centric. And what we do with a lot of our classes here at K-State is try to provide students with really good hands-on experience using desktop GIS software applications, which is primarily the realm of GIS experts these days, to interact with Portal and data. Okay? And once you've got a project complete, to work effectively in the cloud, inside of a Portal application, and do things like create mobile GIS applications using a software application like Field Maps or Survey 123. Create custom GIS web applications with instant apps or Experience Builder. Or translate your maps and data into effective at-a-glance communication tools with something like ArcGIS dashboards. Okay. So we're at ArcGIS Pro, that transition from desktop to Pro, the desktop application, and we're going to do a little bit of interaction here today with Portal so you can see what that looks like. A timeline. Okay, so you have to give me some feedback on if you like this. Brand new slide for me. So I decided to go back to 1969. That's what's on the far left of my timeline here. And that's when Esri was founded. Jack Dangermond, the owner and founder of Esri, created that in 1969. Same year as ARPANET. Does anybody know what ARPANET was? The precursor of today's internet. Going back to 1979. And I threw in some additional what I thought were kind of landmark moments. The launch of Landsat 1, Navstar 1, the first GPS satellite, 1978, the World Wide Web in 89. For those of you that were alive at the time, a seminal moment in the year 2000 when selective availability was turned off on GPS satellites so we could all freely use it. It was unencrypted. Google Maps in 2005, cloud computing starting in about 2006. Many of you said that you were familiar with ArcGIS Online. It's hard to believe that actually has been around since 2012. 5G networks in 2019, and then finally 2025 here today. In terms of Esri software, the first applications that they produced was called ArcInfo. Version 1 was officially released in 1981. The last version, ArcInfo 8, 1999. So if you're familiar with command line driven software, think a command prompt on a Windows machine, or you're typing in, there's no graphical user interface, right? You interact with the software purely through memorizing functions, sort of like programming these days. That's what ArcInfo was. You could produce a map, but everything was, you were typing in commands. That's how Sean learned GIS back in the day. Down at the bottom of the slide, I've got some programming languages, I'll say, which represents the primary technique for creating custom tools in that software application. And with ArcInfo, it supported only a proprietary macro language called Arc Macro Language, or AMLs. Okay? And I could actually, to this day, I still have some AML scripts that I have not translated into more modern languages. After ArcInfo came ArcView. Anybody ever run ArcView before? Yeah, it's good, Zach. Yeah, the old timers in the room. ArcView was the first attempt by Esri to produce a GIS that had a graphical user interface. It was great software. It was released in 1993. The last version, ArcView 3.3, came out in 2002. We used to teach classes here on campus with ArcView. Really stellar little program with a small footprint on your computer. And like ArcInfo, you could do some custom programming within ArcView using yet another proprietary language called Avenue. After ArcView came ArcGIS Desktop. So if ArcGIS Desktop is kind of an umbrella term for ArcMap, ArcCatalog, ArcToolbox, ArcScene, and ArcGlobe, the 5 primary desktop GIS applications. The first version of ArcGIS Desktop came out in 2000, and this software was designed specifically to bring a new data model to the masses, and that is the geodatabase. Right? That was the primary reason that software, in addition to a refresh and continuing the tradition of a graphical user interface, that was the first desktop software application that really focused on the use of geodatabases for GIS users. 2021, Arc Desktop 10.8.2, the most current and last release of ArcGIS Desktop, that's when it came out. One of the reasons you might be here is that ArcGIS Desktop is being retired in March of next year. In fact, I can't get licenses for that software anymore. And you won't be able to download or install it on your computer. So again, now is the time to begin transitioning, if you're a hardcore ArcGIS Desktop user, to ArcGIS Pro. Just a quick comment on the programming languages. When ArcGIS Desktop came out, its primary programming language for custom tool development was Microsoft's Visual Basic for Applications. It's transitioned after a couple years to Python 2. In the most recent releases, you can run Python 3 in an Arc Desktop environment. Finally, we've got ArcGIS Pro. First version came out in 2015. Here today, I believe the most recent version is 3.5.3. And as I mentioned before, in addition to carrying over the strengths of ArcGIS Desktop and working with geodatabases, it is that portal-centric desktop GIS software application that exclusively uses Python version 3 as its programming interface. Yeah, this makes me feel old, because where did I come into play? I think ArcInfo 3. Anyway, okay, so a little bit of the history of the software. We'll start ArcGIS Pro here in a bit, but I want to plant a couple seeds in your head right now regarding key enhancements of ArcGIS Pro as compared to ArcGIS Desktop or ArcMap. And I'll start with processing power here on the right. I mentioned earlier there's about 1,000 pre-built geoprocessing tools to work with raster and vector data. Significantly more, about 600 more than ArcGIS Desktop. It has a 64-bit architecture compared to 32-bit for ArcMap, so you've got better performance in general and better memory usage. Many, and I won't say many, several of the geoprocessing tools, those 1,000 geoprocessing tools, provide support for parallel processing, and the number of tools that support parallel processing increases every year. So again, more effective, efficient computations on the desktop. It uses Python 3, which is great, no more having to learn proprietary Esri-centric programming languages. And it incorporates a form of Jupyter notebooks within the desktop software called ArcGIS notebooks. So you can have markdown and code and graphs all in documents, which is a great way to kind of document a project. In terms of organization, ArcGIS Pro is a single application. If I go back a couple slides here, I mentioned ArcGIS Desktop has 5 applications associated with it. So if we want to do 3D work, for example, we can't do that in ArcMap. We'd have to open up ArcScene or ArcGlobe. ArcGIS Pro is a single application, so we can do 2D mapping, 3D mapping, all inside of ArcGIS Pro, that one application. There's not a separate Arc catalog, there's not a separate Arc toolbox, it's all one application. Sometimes this may not be a strength, it kind of depends on your personal preferences, but Esri collaborates a lot with Microsoft, so ArcGIS Pro uses Microsoft's Ribbon framework to provide context-sensitive, a context-sensitive user interface. So the things that you'll see at the top of the application will change depending on what you're working with inside the software itself. Again, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get a feel for that, it works really, really well. While all of those are really compelling reasons to use ArcGIS Pro, probably the most immediate advantage that ArcGIS Pro brings is that it is project-based. Remind me, who has used ArcMap before? Yeah. How many maps can you have in ArcMap? 1. Yeah, it is a map-based software application. So if you've got a project that you're working on and you need to have 5 different map projects, you're going to have 5 different map documents and open each up separately in order to accomplish whatever objectives you have. ArcGIS Pro is project-based, so you can have dozens of maps and dozens of layouts, 2D and 3D, all within one project. Okay? That is, once that sinks in and you start seeing the advantages of that, that alone will encourage you to never want to go back to ArcMap because you can have everything inside of a single project. Enough of me just talking. Let's get into where you can access the software and how, importantly, you can license it. So if you're logged into the machines, you can open up your favorite browser and go to gis.ksu.edu, easy URL to remember. So gis.ksu.edu is our campus GI Science virtual collaboratory website. This site serves a couple of purposes. One, it is our membership portfolio into the University Consortium for Geographic Information Science. K-State's the only full institutional member of this public-private partnership organization, national organization here in the state of Kansas. More immediately, it's also the website that I direct people, and you can direct people to as well, to download Esri software. Okay. If you want to download Esri software, this is the only website that you should go to. You cannot go to an Esri website for that purpose. Okay. And if you click here in the virtual collaboratory under software and resources, and obtain GIS software. There are help documents for how to set up your license for ArcGIS Pro, how to install ArcGIS Pro on your computer, and if you click here, you can also access via your EID and password pretty much all the Esri software. I don't put all of it there, but what 90% of users on campus want. So as a K-State member of the K-State community, if you are an active faculty, staff member, or student, you can download and install Esri GIS software on university or personal computers. That is now legal to do that. Okay. Just beware with ArcGIS Pro, it does take a computer with some pretty beefy operating system components for it to work effectively. Okay. So that's where you go to access software and additional help. We'll go through this together, but once you've got the software, as we do here on our lab computers, in order to get a license, we have to create what's called a linked account with K-State. So the other website I'd like you to go to is kstate.maps.arcgis.com. And anyone who wants to run if you've never run ArcGIS Pro before, we have to go to this website. Assuming you've got the software installed on the computer, this is your first or next step. Go ahead and click the sign in button in the top right. And what we're going to do here in a moment, once we sign in successfully, your EID will be added as a member of the K-State GIS portal, which is great. And you'll actually be given sufficient permissions within the portal to view, create, edit, and publish content. Okay, so that gives you a lot of capability in ArcGIS Online, K-State's version of that. For us today, it also activates what's called a named user license that belongs to you and only you to run ArcGIS Pro and all of its extension applications. So K-State annually pays Esri for a university-wide software site license, so we have access to everything. So once you click that sign in button, you should see a sign into window similar to this. Go ahead and click on the blue box that says Kansas State University. And yeah, we're probably about to start a couple instances of dual authentication, so I understand it's going to take a little bit of time. Okay. Here, we do not want to sign in the area that says ArcGIS Login. Every time, and we'll be doing this in the desktop software as well, you're always going to want to click on the blue Kansas State University box. And once you do that, you'll start see K-State's single sign-in system. Provide your EID and password. Your account will be created. And again, what's happening behind the scenes is you're being given permission to work within the portal, as well as creating that all-important named user license. So let me go to K-State Maps. Oh, yay. Okay. And if you see then your first name in the top right after that process, you know you've been successful. Even if you never use our university portal, you have to have done this step or completed this step at least once, right? Because that's what activates your license. And I'm going to have to, my interface is going to be slightly different, so I'm going to use slides here. When you start ArcGIS Pro, it's going to look a little bit different initially. You'll see hopefully a window your first time that looks like this. To take advantage of your named user license, again, don't click on ArcGIS Login. That's the number one mistake people make when logging into the desktop software. Instead, click on your ArcGIS organization's URL. Okay. Your license is connected to K-State. We need to tell ArcGIS Pro that here. Once you click on your organization's ArcGIS organization's URL, type in K-State, no hyphen. Basically, you're typing in the URL to our portal here, right? kstate.maps.arcgis.com. Just a quick aside, it could be possible that you're a member of multiple organizations' GIS portals. We can have and establish connections to all of those portals in the desktop GIS software, Arc Pro, but here we're signing in as K-Staters to take advantage of our site license and the named user licenses. Once you've typed in K-State under your ArcGIS organization's URL, go ahead and click the Continue button. You'll see once again the blue Kansas State University, and I still haven't figured out why it has Kansas State University twice in that. Doubly important. And go through the single sign-on procedure with your EID and password. So if you are in another lab on campus, if you're on your laptop or desktop computer at home, as long as you have internet access, you can always log into ArcGIS Pro using your K-State credentials, as long as your EID is valid. Okay. And after graduation, things are getting a little bit tighter with EID permission. So as long as you're here, a student, you work at K-State as a faculty member or staff member, you're in good shape. Good. Long story short, now that you've signed into the portal, created your account, the named user license, technically you never have to go back to that portal website again. If you're at the ArcGIS Pro start screen, I'd like you to go ahead and find Settings along the left-hand side. Go ahead and click on Settings. And under Settings, if you choose About, you'll be able to see which version of ArcGIS Pro you're running. And if there's any updates to the software that Esri has published. Depending on your relationship with the computer, whether you have administrative privileges on the computer, you may or may not be able to actually perform updates yourself. Here in the lab, you cannot. Okay? But if it's your own personal computer, as soon as Esri releases an update, ArcGIS Pro will tell you, and you would have the opportunity to go ahead and update if you so choose. I'm an update skeptic. I often run at least one version behind the most recent to allow the bugs that Esri doesn't know about to be discovered by other people, while I'm running the operational software that's one version behind. Okay. Next, while we're here in the settings, go ahead and find portals along the menu on the left. And I'll do the same thing here in my version of ArcGIS Pro. Okay. And this is the interface where you can add any number of Esri GIS portals. Does everyone see ArcGIS stuff? That is Esri's portal, the public portal available and produced by Esri. Let's go ahead then and add K-State's portal to your software. To do that, you'll want to click on Add Portal. And just like, sort of like we did before, we're going to type in a full URL, https://, and then kstate.maps.arcgis.com. The same URL that we entered into our browser to get to the K-State portal. Okay. I'm going to cancel because it's already part of my software application, and I see that right there. I also have another portal for my lab. We've got the ArcGIS Esri's portal, so I can interact with at least 3 through this instance of ArcGIS Pro. What I want to go ahead and do here is make K-State's portal the default portal that the software will interact with when the software starts. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots next to that newly added portal and then sign in. The sign-in screen will come up. Now I sign in a little bit differently than you because I'm the site administrator. You'll click the blue K-State box again. Now I'm signed in. And might be hard to see on the screen, but on your own monitors, you'll see the name of the portal highlighted, and then there's a little green circle with a check mark in it saying that's the portal I'm connected to. Again, as you have a need, you can switch between portals as long as they're listed here in our collection of portals that are available to us. So now, if I go back, get out of settings with the back arrow on the upper left of that screen, I'm back to my initial ArcGIS Pro screen, but notice in the upper right, it says Sean, Kansas State University, so that's my K-State account. But I'm signed in to the portal kstate.maps.arcgis.com. Well, congratulations. We've done a lot already. You've created a portal account in K-State's ArcGIS Online, a named user license, and you've gone through the semi-non-intuitive way of logging into the software. The good news is if you were to come back in later, log off and come back in later today, many of the login steps would not have to be recreated. The computer is going to remember, oh, you're part of this organization. But those steps critical to just starting the darn GIS software. And one more time as well, just remember that as you use other instances of ArcGIS Pro in different facilities, you can still rely on your named user license to work. Okay, so it's not something that's just applicable here in this lab. Well, now that we've got the software started, let's go through one example here of importing some work from the older ArcMap software, and then we'll take a short break. Let me define a couple of terms here, though, before we get started. The technique that we're going to use to import older work into ArcGIS Pro initially here this morning is by importing a map package. And a map package is something that we can create in the older ArcGIS desktop software that contains a map and the data used by that map in a single portable and shareable file. Its most common use had been to publish map packages in a portal, and then collaborators or anyone you chose to share that map package with could download essentially your work in ArcGIS Desktop. Similarly, we could put it on a thumb drive and hand it to someone else, and they could open up exactly your project on their computer. So we're taking an ArcMap map document, an MXD file, all the data that's part of that map document, and putting it in this package. This zoning map of a suburb of Wellington, New Zealand is the example that we're going to look at here. This is actually just a quick screen capture of the layout view in ArcMap of this project, which contains two maps as well as just an image file here. To get this map package file, I'm actually going to have you go back in your ArcGIS Pro software to portals and make the arcgis.com portal your default. So remember, to do that, we already have the portal in our list. Just click the options, the three dots there on the right-hand side, and set as your active portal. Because the map package that we're going to download and import into Pro is not in K-State's portal, it's in Esri's portal. So three dots, set as active portal. So now that I've got the arcgis.com portal set up as my active one, which I need to click the dot, I can go back to the start screen, look in the top right, and it says I'm connected right now to www.arcgis.com. But I'm still Sean from Kansas State University. All right, so here in Pro, one of the things that you'll see in our start screen is if we were creating a brand new project. Again, ArcGIS Pro is project-based, not map-based. We could choose to start from 4 different beginnings, starting with a map, catalog, a scene, a global scene, so think Google Earth, or a local scene. But here we're actually going to start without a template. So I'm going to click that option to start without the template. Believe it or not, an untitled and unsaved project is being created for us, but right now there's nothing in it. It's completely empty. The next thing that we're going to want to do is you should see the main menu at the top. If it's not already highlighted, select Insert, and then Import Map. Okay. And if you hover your mouse over Import Map, it's going to tell you this is a way that we can import an existing ArcMap, ArcGlobe, or ArcScene document. So this is a really good way to take a map package that we may have created or others and bring it into ArcGIS Pro. So go ahead and click Import Map. And for ArcMap users, this is going to be a very different step. Where is this map package that we want to add? Well, it's actually being stored in the Esri ArcGIS.com portal. And as we can see here in the import window, we have an option for project, so think files local to your computer, or portal. And I know that we're connected to Esri's ArcGIS portal. And we've got within that portal several options, right? You may have an account in that portal with content. You could search Esri's Living Atlas, which is a great repository of data stored in the cloud. Here we want to choose ArcGIS Online. Okay. And I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger. And I want to go ahead and within ArcGIS Online, knowing I'm connected to Esri's portal, I'm going to search ArcGIS Online here in the upper right. And I'm going to type in Kelburn Map Package. And let me bring up my slides so you can see that a little bit easier. Obviously, you've got to know that that map package exists so you know how to effectively search for it. Could be a colleague's map package. It could be something that you had stored a couple of years ago when ArcMap was all the rage, and now you need to get it into ArcGIS Pro. If you're successful in searching for Kelburn Map Package, you'll probably see several things returned. You want to find the entry that just says Kelburn, and then one that has a check mark next to it. Do you see that little check mark right here? What that is telling me, and let me go back to my Arc Pro. Yeah, that check mark. That's telling me that's an authoritative data set. So Esri has labeled that versus somebody else's version of Kelburn. So I want to go ahead and select that authoritative data set and hit OK. So after a couple of seconds, we'll see that former map document get imported into ArcGIS Pro as part of a project. You will likely get a little warning in the upper right about a transformation warning. That's okay. That's not an issue. It's just basically telling us that some of our data has a different map projection and coordinate system than a base map here. And we're in. Okay. So looking at the Kelburn suburb of Wellington, New Zealand. All right, now that we've got the former map document imported, you should see catalog on the right-hand side. This is the former Arc catalog for those of you that were ArcMap users. Now catalog is part of the single ArcGIS Pro application and doesn't have to be started separately. And you'll see catalog organized pretty consistently here across all systems, where you've got maps, toolboxes, databases, layouts, and so forth. Note in catalog as well that we're looking within the project, right? So the material, the files, the organization on your computer. If you expand maps, this is telling us we have 2 separate maps that are now part of this project. Again, something that we could not do in ArcMap. And by default, the map named Kelburn opens up. So we are in the data view here in the center, looking at the Kelburn map, and I know that because the tab here tells me it's Kelburn. If you want, you can double click on Wellington, the second map in this project. Another tab will open up, and it's just an overview map of where this suburb is actually located. Okay. As I mentioned before, ArcPro's project focus is a welcome enhancement. I could have dozens of maps as part of my project here, right? Each of which would contain probably different data, but it's all stored conveniently in one ArcGIS Pro project. So in addition to the map view and the catalog view, at least on my computer, I have the contents pane arrayed on the right-hand side. So I can see the data layers that are comprising my map. I can turn them on and off. I can use my mouse in the data view, my mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out, right? Interact with the data a little bit. And we'll play around after the break with a different project, but doing a little bit of editing here. But this typical layout with contents, the data view, and the catalog is how I generally set up my system. ArcPro is infinitely customizable in terms of its layout. So if for some reason I wanted the catalog pane somewhere else, I can simply click and drag it and maybe arrange it at the top. I hate that view, but if that's what you like, you can do it. Again, I'll anchor that back on the left-hand side, right? And I can move the windows around. I can move the contents. Okay. So however you like to work with the software, you can customize your interface to look and feel exactly the way that you want it. The ribbon structure was another thing that I highlighted about a difference, arguably an enhancement. So you've got the main menu arrayed across the top, and depending on what you might be interacting with, the contents in that ribbon can change. ArcMap knows when I'm working with vector data, for example, and only presents to me tools that work with vector data. If I were working with a satellite image or a drone image, it would recognize that as raster and give me different tools to use. So it's a context-sensitive ribbon that will change depending on the tasks and data that I want to perform and the data that I'm working with. Back to catalog for a moment. In addition to one or more maps that can comprise this project, you see toolboxes. So every project has a default toolbox that usually will have the same name as your project. And we haven't titled this project yet, actually, so it just says default. This would be a location for you to store any custom tools that you might create. You can create custom tools with things like Model Builder, so a drag and drop graphical model that you can author to take, to create workflows. It could be Python-based toolboxes. And again, we've got a good repository for that right here. Under databases, there will also be a default file geodatabase. We could spend a 2-hour workshop just talking about data models. So I'll leave file geodatabase. Unless there are questions, I'll just say that that's a file geodatabase. Its main purpose in life is it serves as what's called a scratch workspace for your ArcGIS Pro project. So if you run a geoprocessing tool and it creates a new file or a table as output, unless you tell ArcGIS Pro otherwise, the software is going to want to direct those outputs to that location. We can connect to multiple file or enterprise scale databases and have that listed here right within the project. So we've got the default, our Scratch workspace. If I had another file geodatabase, maybe on my computer that contained a lot of my project data, I could simply right-click on databases and either add an empty database or connect to a lot of different formats for different databases. And again, it's always going to be part of my project. When I save and exit and come back, I've got those connections to my databases automatically there, so I can work with the data in them. Under layouts, in fact, I'll open up the Kelburn map here, which comes up as another tab. In ArcGIS Pro, they are called layout items, and I could have any number, like with maps, I could have any number of layout items in my layout category. Again, project-based rather than map-based. There's other things here in the catalog, but those are the key things. Maybe I'll also highlight folders. So if you've got data that you want to work with that isn't being stored in a database, maybe it's a folder full of shapefiles. Just like with databases, we can right-click on folders and add a folder connection to access those files. And once we save the project, that folder connection is maintained across sessions. So I don't have an example in ArcMap to show you, but where did those two different maps actually come from? The Kelburn map and the Wellington map. We imported a map package, right? A single file that contains a map and data. But we got two maps in the resulting imported ArcGIS Pro project. Again, if you're familiar with ArcMap, the way that data was organized was in two separate data frames in ArcMap. So we had our Kelburn data and our overview data under Wellington. When that was stored as the map package, it imported into Pro. Pro simply took each data frame and treated it as a separate map. So we went from one map with two data frames to two maps in ArcGIS Pro. Good. If you want, it's not required because we're actually done with this. If you wanted to save the project, after importing the project, save as, and then navigate to wherever on your computer or any servers you might be connected to save that project file. Okay. Now, one of the challenging things with importing a map package, and even though we did save the project, the data is currently in a separate location. And that is purely an artifact of this import process. Okay, so I'm saying here, when you create a new ArcGIS Pro project and importing data from a map package, the data is actually not in the project, that folder. It's located in a strange place, wherever it was that you actually extracted the data, which is probably buried in your computer under users, your username, and documents. So one of the weird things about project files is there's a bunch of shape files that actually are being used by this project. If I come back to ArcGIS Pro, normally I would have a connection to a folder which could reside in or outside of my project. It doesn't really matter. But this Kelburn suburb polygon file, if I right-click and find properties, and then choose source, where is this file located? That's the location. This one actually happens to be a feature class inside of a geodatabase, but it's in my users, SHUTCH, documents, ArcGIS Pro, very long. That's where when I downloaded or imported the file, my computer downloaded the package from the portal, expanded it. It's sort of like a zip file in that regard. So all of my project data for Calvert is actually located here. So one way that I can actually connect my project back with that data, if I can remember where that location is I can map it and add it to my project. Add folder connection. See users. Now that folder appears in my project. And I can see all the file geodatabase feature classes that came with the original project file. Again, if I save that, I don't have to reconnect that folder. It's now part of my project properties. And if I want to add data, I can just drag and drop and bring those files into my project. That's really nice, right? You don't necessarily, you may have like data repositories that you maintain, your lab maintains, another organization maintains. So you can simply just connect all those things. Maybe not even have any data stored locally, right? And just connect and drag and drop into the project. Same thing with portal services, but that's another function. Okay. Is everybody back? I think so. I just wanted to show here real quick. This is the ArcMap software. And what that Kelburn data would look like inside of ArcMap. You can see I've got two data frames that comprise the one and only map in ArcMap. This is Kelburn, and I can activate, this is how long ago I use ArcMap. I can activate the other data frame to see the other map. Just a very different way of organizing. Here's what our catalog looks like, map-based versus project-based. Okay, let's continue. Migrating maps, migrating projects via not a map package this time, but a map document. So in the shared Microsoft OneDrive folder that I made available to class, there is a zip file called Malay Language Groups. Go ahead and grab that zip file, download it to your computer, and uncompress that file to a location of your choice, which could be locally, or it could be in your OneDrive account. Does everybody have access to that? There was at the very beginning of class, there was, let me go back. Bit.ly link will take you there. Or I'll show you another way if you'd rather not use OneDrive for that purpose. Packaged in that folder is the zip file that we're going to work with, as well as the PowerPoint slides that I'm using today. So you've got access to that after the workshop. Alternatively, I'll leave this up for a moment. If you're using a lab computer, you can open up File Explorer and find the W drive, Geog for geography, courses, and then in here you'll find a folder called Migrating to ArcGIS Pro. That folder has the exact same files in it as the shared Microsoft OneDrive. You can simply drag and drop that to your desktop, wherever you want to store it temporarily here today. I also recommend, if you're interested, having a copy of that when you leave, so you've got access to the slides. But either way should get you to a folder with that data in it. And I'll show you where I have done that. When I downloaded that, I put it on the C drive. I've got a little folder here called GISL. There's my zip file, and I simply uncompressed it into a folder that looks like that. And one of the reasons why I always hesitate to show working with those files in File Explorer, I'll illustrate here by highlighting continent, maybe. All of those files that looks like 8 separate files, it's one file. It is one shape file. So it's better, and I'll show what that looks like here in a moment inside the GIS software. If you're adding, deleting, manipulating files, it's much better to do that in the GIS software because you actually see the file appropriately in the GIS as opposed to here. Did everybody get that zip file unzipped? Okay. So that's, in addition to several shape files, the zip contained an ArcMap map document. I'll go back real quick to show that. That is, I find it real quickly, right there. In my view, the .mxd, Mali language groups .mxd, that's an ArcMap map document. We have data files, and we've got at the very top, we have a file geodatabase called Mali, mali.gdb. I acquired this data from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. Okay, now that we've got our data unzipped, let's go back to ArcGIS Pro. And since we're going to import a map document, remember before the break we worked with a map package. This time it's going to be a map document. Once again, here in ArcGIS Pro start screen, we're going to choose to start without a template. You'll then be prompted if we go to insert and import map, just like we did earlier with the map package. This time, rather than going to ArcGIS Online and searching for a map package, use the navigation tools to find the map document where you unzip the file. And again, that's going to be called Mali language groups.mxd. Insert, import map. For me, that's this PC, Zebra, this one. There it is. Once you found that MXD, the map document, go ahead and hit OK. With this file, again, but previously we imported a map package. This time we imported just a raw original map document. So again, if you're a longtime ArcMap user, there's no doubt that you've got many ArcMap documents on your computer. It can be as easily, importing that into Pro can be completed as easily as insert map. Just like with the map package, if we save this project, it's not going to contain any of the data that we're looking at. That's going to be stored in another location on your computer. So we would need to make sure that we start including connections to those folders. Okay? So it's not a perfect way of bringing in that older document format and starting from scratch, but it does a really good job most of the time, unless you've got really complicated symbology, of faithfully recreating all the content of that map document inside of ArcGIS Pro. What happened here is when we imported the map document, we went immediately to a layout. If in catalog you open up or expand, I should say, maps and layouts, what we're looking at is the layout item Mali language groups. Why is that the case? Well, whoever created this map document, when they saved it and exited, that's what they were looking at. Okay. So we took that map view. You can see it's a very nice looking map of the different languages used in different regions of the country of Mali. There are 2 separate maps associated with this, which again in ArcMap terms were data frames. We can open up that map. And it doesn't look like anything's there, but if we find in the contents pane here the layer called district boundary, right click and find zoom to layer. That's just a scale difference between how this data was being portrayed in the layout versus the data view. So I can zoom right to the spatial extent of the country and see that in this map. It's kind of a strange term, right? Because when you think map, you think it's got all the components of a map. That's not true in ArcGIS Pro. You build out your true maps with scale bars and north-seeking arrows and things like that in your layouts, not the map view. But one of the things that we probably want to do in terms of cleaning this up a little bit, again, when ArcMap, this map document or map frame came in as a data frame. And it's just labeled generically here as new data frame and new data frame 1, which isn't terribly clear as to the content of that map. So in Catalog, I'm going to find the map new data frame, right-click, and rename it. And you can do it, rename it something like Mali language groups. Okay. Something easy for us or anyone else who's looking at our project to understand what's contained in that map. New data frame 1, I can double click or right click and open that map. It comes up as a new tab in our content view. And it's simply here serving as an overview map or an inset map for the layout. And like we did with the previous map, we can right click and rename it to something like locator map. Okay. Just as one quick example of some renaming within the catalog pane here of ArcGIS Pro. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and once again, staying here within the catalog pane, find folders. And I'm going to create a folder connection to the unzipped Mali language group folder. So depending on where you did that on your computers, this path will be different. But to get started, we'll right-click on folders and add a folder connection. Find where you've got the uncompressed Mali language groups folder and select it. That folder gets added to our project as a folder connection. And if I expand that folder, I can now look at its content here with the GIS software. So I can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shapefiles. There's a map document in that folder. And in the geofile geodatabase called Mali, there is 3 annotation classes and 1 polygon. Again, a folder that exists entirely outside of the project, but we're essentially mapping it to the project. So when I save it and come back the next time, I will always have access to that folder. I don't have to remap that every time I open up the software. Okay. Increasingly, that's the way, kind of the workflow that people are using is you're probably going to have these larger repositories of data within your organization, and you're connecting to them within your project and drawing the resources that you want into your individual projects. Those could be databases, those could be just folders with things like shapefiles, spreadsheets, tables, whatever it might be. The other thing that we can do, I'm going to go ahead and close everything but my Mali language groups maps. You can peruse the content of this map, everything, all the different data layers that are comprising this map are shown here in the contents. We can do some quick exploration. If we click anywhere on the map, notice here up at the top in our ribbon, Map and Explore is highlighted. So if we click anywhere inside of the country boundary, a pop-up window will appear. And we can tell in that region, we can gain a little bit more information about the language spoken, predominant in that region, whatever descriptive attributes are recorded as part of that, that geodatabase feature class or that shapefile called language union. Another way that you can access descriptive attributes that are associated with your features in the map is I'll find the feature language union in the content, is we can right-click on that and find the option attribute table. Just like we saw earlier, can be a floating window. You can anchor it anywhere within your project. I like to put mine at the bottom. We do a lot of right-clicking and selecting things from context menus in ArcGIS Pro.
Is there a way to crop this map and then just look into one specific location?
Within a single region in this case? Yeah, there is. I wouldn't save it as a separate project necessarily, but you can certainly use this as a starting point to narrow down your study area or area of interest. One way that we can do that, district boundary is literally just the national boundary and the sub-districts. And if I open up its attribute table, and maybe that's a better example here, I'll make this just a little bit bigger so we can see. So district boundary, if I look at its properties real quick to remind myself, is a shapefile. And even though it's called district boundary in my contents pane, the actual file is Molly_district boundaries_NGA for National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. It's this shapefile in the map folder right there. Okay. But we've changed the name of that layer just so we have in our legend of our layout something more descriptive than the name of a file. But inside of that are 9 separate polygons. I know it's 9 separate polygons, not because I counted them, but when I opened up the attribute table, it says 0 of 9 selected. So there are 9 different subregions within Molly that this file is representing. And for each of those polygons, there are several descriptive attributes that we've got access to here, including the name. And the name of the region or the district is under the field name_1. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, to build off of your question, you only wanted to work within the region of Timbuktu. One thing that I could do is I could go to analysis. Why does this always look? No, map, sorry. And there will be a tool here called, I gotta find it, select by attributes. And one of the most common ways that we interact with or ask questions of our spatial data files or our tables are through SQL or SQL-like queries. So notice in my contents pane, I'm working with district boundary. It's highlighted. Here in my select by attributes geoprocessing tool, I'm working with district boundary. I'm going to perform a new selection, and I can use this wizard to help me build my SQL expression. I know the name that I want to query is in the field name_1. My query should be name1 is equal to, and I can either type in a value or choose from the existing values in the table, Timbuktu, and hit apply. Don't know why this is taking so long. When I do that, you can see that that region gets highlighted in my map. And if I wanted to, I can take that result, that active selection, come back to Contents, choose right-click on District Boundary, Data, Export Features. Right? So I could take that one region, export it out as its own file, bring it back into my map or a different map, and go from there. That's one way. But one of the things I might actually recommend something different, a different technique. Doing that creates a brand new file, right? It's adding storage requirements. It's adding a file that you've got to keep track of and manage, when in reality, the information I need is already in a file. So there's another technique that we can use called brain cramp, definition query. So I can take the file that contains all the countries, regions, or districts. I'm going to right-click, go to Properties, and choose Definition Query from the options there. And just like we did before with the Select by Attributes tool, I can create a new definition query with a SQL expression. Name 1 is equal to Timbuktu. Hit Apply and OK. Did I not do that? And if I turn off all the other data layers in my map, maybe, I've isolated just that region of interest. I didn't delete anything. I didn't create anything new, right? So I can get access to the area that I want, not as a new file, but as a subset of the original file. A couple of different ways for doing that. Okay. So we can open up the attribute tables. Let me turn everything back on. Actually, I need to go back in and get rid of my definition query, which is easy to do. Right-click, Properties, Edit, no, Cancel, where is this? Delete. Okay. And they all come back. So we work with attribute tables. You'll notice here in my map view, in addition to spatial features, we've got some labels that appear as well. So I'm going to right-click on District Boundary just as an example and find Label from the context menu that appears. If you look closely, you can see that that's already turned on. That was a property that came in with our imported map document. And I can unselect Label. And those region labels that were in white, large white font, disappear from the map. Right? I can turn those labels right back on. Right, and I can see things like Timbuktu, Kidal, some of those other region names appear. What if you don't like the format of those labels? You can right-click on the layer, go to Labeling Properties, and there are numerous ways to customize what this is going to look like. If you find symbol, we can change the font. If we go to Formatting, next let me go back to Font. We can change the position. Is it going to be in the center of the polygon, overlapping? Lots of ways to control that as well. So the ability to go in and fine-tune how these labels look, you could spend hours, right, getting into the details of that. But turning labels on, turning labels off, formatting them, an important part of ultimately of map construction. Is it already 11 o'clock? Just real quick then, I'll also show under Language Union. We can go to Symbology. And if we don't like how the different language regions are symbolized in the map, we've got many opportunities to change that. What the map is showing, color schemes, hash marks, shading, whatever it is, to really pull out the information here that we want. But that's in a nutshell, bringing in a map document, having it inside of our ArcGIS Pro project. Of course, we'd want a project, save as, to commit those changes in the project format. So a couple of quick options for bringing in ArcMap documents or map packages into the ArcGIS Pro environment. Sorry for running long, but I just wanted to show here as we wrap up as well, under additional opportunities. If you've got a copy of the folder that we used today with the data, my slides are in there. There's a really good help file with the Esri documentation that will go through in additional detail some steps for not only importing different ArcMap products into the ArcGIS Pro environment, but also some symbolization and editing routines that are enhanced in ArcGIS Pro. So that's right in the Esri help. There's also a really nice tutorial that uses this same data set, the Mali language groups, that will show you how to go in, change labeling properties, do a few editing steps as well once you've imported that map document. All free to anyone who has access to those URLs. One final thing, as a part of our university site license, all K-State faculty, staff, and students have free access to Esri's Training Academy. You can access that at www.esri.com/training. Any web-based training module offered by Esri, if you sign in with your EID and password, you can take those courses for free, which is a tremendous resource to have. Lastly, I'll highlight our next workshop on September 22nd. Again, the theme this semester is kind of getting started for beginners with our next 3 workshops, Unlocking Spatial Insights with GIS. And again, that'll be an ArcGIS Pro-centric session. And wrapping up, if you'd like to provide us with some feedback on the workshop today, you can click the link, scan the QR code to go to a Qualtrics survey. I've got some time afterwards. If you'd like to stick around, you've got some questions that you'd like to ask, or if you ran into any issues today, I'd be happy to stick around. Otherwise, thanks so much for coming. Appreciated having you here. Look forward to maybe seeing you in some of our future hands-on workshops.